Welcome to the Vin Armani Show. We are streaming live on YouTube at youtube.com/VinArmani. Also on Twitter and Periscope at VinArmani is my handle there. We are proud members of the Activist Post Podcast Network, so you can check out all of our audio archives at activistpost.com. You can also check us out on dozens of terrestrial radio stations as well as satellite and streaming on the internet on the Liberty Radio Network. That's LRN.FM. Be sure to go and check them out. Well, it's 10 a.m. Pacific time, Monday morning. We are back, and we have a great show for you today. My guest in the second hour is Amaury Séchet. He is also known as Deadal Nix, probably better known his handle. Some might argue that he is actually the creator of Bitcoin Cash, if there is one. He is the Benevolent Dictator of, and you'll learn what that means, of Bitcoin ABC, which is the first implementation that implemented the big blocks that allows for Bitcoin Cash to scale on chain. So we are very glad to have him here. In the first hour, I wanted to do a deep dive into a phenomenon and a woman, but more a phenomenon. This woman is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She just won the Democratic congressional primary for Queens in the Bronx. No small feat. She defeated a longtime incumbent that had the establishment behind him. She calls herself a democratic socialist. But I really want to dig into what it is that she stands for, if anything, and what this very interesting phenomenon dealing with her is. She's got over 500,000 Twitter followers now. She came from out of nowhere. She's 28 years old, Puerto Rican woman, raised at least partially in the Bronx. An interesting story, but an even more interesting brand. And it's that brand that I really want to talk about, because I think that it represents an interesting, but also perhaps a dangerous moment in our culture. So, to help me get through all of this today, as always, my good friend, co-host and producer, Mr. Christian Reyes. Christian.
Good morning, Vin.
Good morning, sir. Good to see you.
You too.
Yeah, man. I'm pretty stoked about today's show. Very, very interesting topics to discuss. It was weird because, like, I had some things that I potentially wanted to talk about. I mean, we made the announcement. Finally, we're able to make the public announcement for Cointext getting a round of seed funding from Yeoman's Capital, who are a Texas-based VC. They put together a fund especially for us with some very, very cool individual investors involved. These guys are great, very active, great advice, and so we were finally able to do that, and I wanted to at least spend a little bit of time talking about why we made the decisions that we made in terms of funding, to give maybe some idea of where budding entrepreneurs how they can start to make moves in this space, because it's no small thing to start a project and then go out and get funding. That's something that you, without capital, there's no business, you know?
Yeah.
But this week, the past couple of weeks actually, this story, this woman, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, I don't know if you've seen much about her, but she's become quickly this media darling, and she's become a phenomenon. Much in the same way as the gun control kids, it's got that same sort of feel. 28-year-old woman from the Bronx, Latina, very well-spoken, well-educated, has an interesting pedigree in terms of what she's done in her short 28 years. I'm sure I'll get a chance to talk about the entrepreneurship stuff, and we'll definitely get into some of those things with Amaury today, right? Because he's a developer, an engineer. He's got a glimpse and a seat at the table for everything that's going on in the world of Bitcoin Cash. Super intelligent guy, and an ANCAP, right? An avowed anarcho-capitalist. So this woman, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who, as I said, won her primary, Democratic primary. It's a Democratic district. There's never going to be a Republican congressman from that district. So it's Democrat versus Democrat, which is interesting.
Right.
Running as she calls herself a democratic socialist.
Wow.
This term means nothing. Well, I'll tell you what I think the term means, right? What I believe this term means is, the typical socialist, how they're trying to separate themselves from, I'm not a socialist, like the USSR type of socialist, right?
Yeah.
Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, or Socialist Maoist China, or any of these things. No, I'm not that. I'm a democratic socialist. See, those socialists, they implemented policies of stealing from people, of oppression of individuals, of denial of human rights, denial of property rights. They did all of that, and they just did it unilaterally. See, they were like dictators. I'm a democratic socialist, meaning I'm going to implement the exact same policies, but you get a chance to vote, and you're going to believe that it was your idea.
Jesus.
That's really what I believe. I believe that this whole situation truly, truly is. So, we're going to get into that. Before we do, a couple of quick housekeeping things. A lot of people have been asking recently about Code from Go. I think it's particularly, we've got in the next 3, so I believe if I have the lineup correct, we've got Amaury Séchet today. We've got Johannes Vermoral from LOCAD next week, and then we have Bruce Fenton after that. So we've got some tech, entrepreneurship, financial, all of that. And running up against that, I think that some people will be interested in what's going on with Code from Go, the coding classes. So I'm going to let you know now, within the next day or two, be paying attention to my social media, and it will definitely be announced on the show next week. But if you're paying attention this week, I'm going to go ahead and open up registration. It's going to be, I haven't decided the exact date that the next Code from Go sessions are going to start. It's going to be in mid-August, however, like maybe the second week of August. And I'm only taking, as always, 75 people. Only taking 75 people. And the response this particular time is seeming to indicate to me that I'm going to sell it out again. So that's why I want to do this way, that it's like, I'm not saying that it's open right now, because I don't want you to jump off and go and sign up if you're watching the show. Keep watching the show. It'll be in the next couple days, probably tomorrow or day after, Wednesday, that I will open up registration. The dates will be there, and you can sign up. So just wanted to let that be known. Also, Christian, I saw that you had some, that you had said that you just did a large run of shirts. So we've got new shirts, Govern Yourself. Here's the shirts: Read 1984, Bitcoin and Ethereum and Litecoin and Blockchain, Bitcoin Cash, Simple Economics, the Dash logo, No Hodl. It's one of my favorites. Individual, Make Bitcoin Cash Again. And we've got the Anarchy Ball women's and the ANCAP women's.
Great for summertime.
Yep. So, and then, of course, if people could see, if you want to come back to us, you've got on the Govern Yourself. That's available as well. One of my favorites right there. So yes, governyourself.com, GVRNURSLF.com. You also, this week, what else do we have this week? The BCH Meetup, right?
Yeah, BCH Meetup is coming this Thursday from 7 to 9 p.m. at Las Vegas Distillery, and sponsored by Bitcoin.com and also the Bitcoin Cash Fund, Baby Vodka, Tech Titans. We'll all be in the house and discussing what is possible with Bitcoin Cash and what we're looking at with the future of crypto and Bitcoin Cash, and also giveaways and some cool swag. And you will also, if you have not gotten Bitcoin Cash yet, you will also be able to get your first Bitcoin Cash at the meetup. Also, you're going to be able to purchase at the distillery. You'll be able to purchase cocktails and Baby Vodka, and it's going to be a great time. So that's this coming Thursday from 7 to 9 p.m. at Las Vegas Distillery in Las Vegas.
Perfect. Love it. I love it. Okay, so we've got some time. Let's get into this little dive here. Now I want to preface this by saying that this is, well, let's go to news number one. In my mind, when we first started out this show, one of the things that I kept saying over and over and over was read 1984, read 1984, read 1984. And there's an interesting section and an interesting piece of understanding in 1984 where Winston has been captured, he's being interrogated, his will is being broken. And he's basically told by the agent who has set him up about the fact that they have abandoned the sort of the veneer that used to exist, and now they're just after power. It's just power for power's sake. They no longer are laboring under the falsehood of like the Maos or the Stalins, even the Hitlers, that there was some other thing that they were trying to do, bettering the people, the class warfare, the dictatorship of the proletariat. They've abandoned all of that in 1984. And he tells him, no, it's not that. It's pure power. That's all we care about, just power. And it's an interesting section, and it's something that stood out to me because of the honestness of the cynicism. And so, as I was promoting this show and saying what we're going to talk about, there's something in this campaign of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez that feels to me like the end game, because it is so blatant in its cynicism for anyone who would take yet a moment to stop and think about it. So we're going to take a moment, we're going to stop and think about it. We're going to start this off with this video. This is her campaign video. For the people who are watching, you're going to notice the style is going to feel very reminiscent of a lot of marketing that's around now. But the people watching, the people listening, listen to what she says, but then also pay attention to the music in the background. See what emotions are being drawn up inside of you. And then we'll talk once it's over. So go ahead, Christian, throw this up.
Women like me aren't supposed to run for office. I wasn't born to a wealthy or powerful family. Mother from Puerto Rico, dad from the South Bronx. I was born in a place where your zip code determines your destiny. My name is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I'm an educator, an organizer, a working class New Yorker. I've worked with expectant mothers, I've waited tables and led classrooms. And going into politics wasn't in the plan. But after 20 years of the same representation, we have to ask, who has New York been changing for? Every day gets harder for working families like mine to get by. The rent gets higher, healthcare covers less, and our income stays the same. It's clear that these changes haven't been for us, and we deserve a champion. It's time to fight for a New York that working families can afford. That's why I'm running for Congress. This race is about people versus money. We've got people, they've got money. It's time we acknowledge that not all Democrats are the same. That a Democrat who takes corporate money, profits off foreclosure, doesn't live here, doesn't send his kids to our schools, doesn't drink our water or breathe our air, cannot possibly represent us. What the Bronx and Queens needs is Medicare for all, tuition for public college, a federal jobs guarantee, and criminal justice reform. We can do it now. It doesn't take 100 years to do this. It takes political courage. A New York for the many is possible. It's time for one of us. Vote for Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on June 26th.
So the hashtag on her thing is one of us. Did you see that?
Yeah.
Oh, and you got the music,
Yeah.
that style, that particular filter. There's a scene in there where she's speaking in the church, and the way that it's shot, the sort of cinema verite, how it's kind of how it's moving a little bit, right? So you can tell it's handheld camera. Just the way that they did everything. I mean, it starts out with her in an apartment that is like, you know, lower class. It's definitely not even like a middle class apartment per se. Cheap apartment. She's putting on her makeup, you know, in the bathroom. She walks up the flight of stairs. Looks like she's coming out of a basement apartment, right? So they make it look like she's in a basement apartment. They have her show her on the subway, on the train, right? These are the important things. It's not even what she's saying. It's this image, and it's like, okay, who is this woman? Like, what can we say about her? What is trying to be? What's her platform? She said what her platform was. Her platform was, she said, what does the Bronx need? Do you have your fan on there? Do you have your AC on?
Hold on, I'm losing you. I gotta cut my AC because
why is your AC still on? All right. So, not talking to Christian. Now, there he is. He's back. Yeah, I was wondering about that AC, man. That AC was AC was going strong, bro. It was going real strong.
Did it get louder?
Yeah, it got real loud.
It got to the point where I couldn't hear anything that you're saying.
Yeah, it got super. It was super loud. It was super loud. So
I was trying to.
So what does she? So what does she say? And what is her platform that she says the Bronx needs? And it's just the craziest platform. She's like, Medicaid for all. Okay, so already we have Medicaid for the poorest Americans. That's already Obamacare. We have it. Medicaid for all, so single-payer health care. She said, well, one of her things that she didn't say there is she wants to abolish ICE, the Immigrations and Customs Department. She wants criminal justice reform, tuition-free college, right? And the most interesting, she's got this idea of a federal jobs act, which is basically if you can't find a job, you apply and the federal government will just give you a job. If you're unemployed, you apply to the federal government and the federal government gives you a job. Literally every single thing she's saying is free shit.
Right.
Like, she's saying what the Bronx needs is free shit. Free shit. But it's like, okay, the one that trips me out where I'm like, yo, how can you not be thinking? This is like you're not even thinking about this one. That it's like, okay, Federal Jobs Act. So what are you going to do? You're going to create a federal program that for people who don't have jobs, but it's not really jobs, is it, right? It's income. Right. Income is the problem. Right. The problem is not that you don't have a job to do. The problem is that because you don't have a job, you can't sustain yourself. So it's like, okay, so what are we going to do? So let's say that the job is, let's say a yearly, it pays you $25,000 a year. Let's say. Because is it really going to pay? Maybe 30, right?
Right.
30,000. Let's say it's $30,000 a year. For every person that you would give a job to create this institution and give a $30,000 a year job, let's talk about what these jobs will be. One, there's no fucking way that these jobs can be productive in any way. They can't be anything more than busy work because the chance that an unemployed person will have the skills that would be appropriate for a government job that, not that any government job has particular utility, but a government job that would have some amount of utility is very unlikely. This person can't find a job. So this is going to have to be like manual labor jobs. Okay, but what does that mean? That means that you're going to have to create this institution so that you can pay these people $30,000 a year, but every $30,000 a year job is probably going to cost like $60,000 a year. Seriously. Because the administration of it, the extra bureaucracy, all of that. So it's like, dude, So that means you've got to steal 60,000 to pay this person 30. Why not just steal, if you're going to steal, why not just steal 30,000 and just give them the fucking 30,000?
Yeah, exactly. It's fucking crazy.
As
dude.
opposed to taking up 40 hours a week or more, because they're probably going to have to travel there, which probably means they're going to have to take public transportation and do all of this. So basically what you're telling me is, not only are you going to steal from me to give this person money, you're going to steal from me and give this person money in a manner that ensures they will never have the time to find a job that is not coming from stolen money.
Yep, it's ultimate slavery.
Like, it's like, wow. So basically what you're talking about doing is you're going to build up a whole group of people who their money relies upon those who are actually productive being taxed. Because where do you think that money's coming from? There's only two. You can either steal it through direct taxation, or you can inflate the currency by printing money, which is taxation on future generations. Those are the only two ways to do it. You can either steal the money or counterfeit it. Those are their only two options that they have. That's her plan.
Yeah, it's scam. It's a big fucking scam.
So let's talk about her background, right? Because you noticed in there where she was like, she starts out, women like me are not supposed to run for office. I don't come from a wealthy family. I come from, this, and it's like, okay, women like you are not supposed to run for office. Well, let's look at her background. This is off of not her controlled bio. This is off of Netroots, which is like when she had first started running. Now it's been crafted very well, but I love this. It says, prior to her candidacy, Alexandria. Now mind you, this is Netroots is favorable to her. They're promoting her, right? So this is a favorable bio. This is not like somebody trying to say, oh, she's not who she says she is. This is like a favorable bio, okay? Prior to her candidacy, Alexandria worked for the Foreign Affairs and Immigration Office of the late U.S. Senator Ted Kennedy, served as the National Hispanic Institute's social entrepreneur in residence, and founded Brook Avenue Press, a project to develop methods on parent-child literacy education. In the wake of the financial crisis, Alexandria spent time working in the NYC restaurant industry, which fueled her passion for working-class advocacy. Most recently, she produced The Road To, a live web series documenting cross-country road trip visiting sites like Flint, Michigan, Standing Rock, and Women's March, D.C. Okay. She's only 28 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Every single thing this woman has done, besides tending bar to make ends meet in between finding these things, have been government-related or public policy things.
That were not talked about in the promo.
Her trajectory, when she's like, running for office, being in politics was never in the plan. It's like, bitch, if being in politics was never in the plan, you've done nothing but be in politics. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Your resume reads like somebody who's in politics. That's all it reads like. It's just, and that's why I say the level of cynicism.
Right.
Like to where it's just like, no, you're stupid. You're so stupid. You're so dumb that I can literally say anything. And if I've got the right soundtrack underneath, the swelling, wah, 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 and then I've got the right shot so that it looks like a fucking Apple commercial, so that it looks like I'm selling you an iPhone, then you're sold. That's all I need to do. You're that stupid. No qualifications. None.
Nope.
None.
And they're playing the sympathy card like crazy. Sympathy is super powerful when it comes to advertising and marketing, and it's so manipulative.
So let's talk about manipulation, right? Let's talk about manipulation. Throw up this buttons thing, right? Then I want to read to you just a little bit more about this woman. This is from Wikipedia, which has obviously been doctored by her people very well, which is fine, which is what you're supposed to do. Political candidate, fine enough. So these buttons are I want people who are watching to take a good look at these buttons. These are campaign buttons that have her picture on it. We're going to discuss, we've discussed on this show, hand. We've discussed when an artist is trying to do something, this is memetics. Like trying to make something look like something you've seen before so that you subconsciously will associate the two of them even if they're not related. So here's her buttons. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. One button says abolish ICE. One says improved Medicare for all. One says people before profits. Okay. Leave that up and I'll read from her Wikipedia. Ocasio-Cortez was born in the Bronx, New York City on October 13th, 1989, to Blanca Ocasio-Cortez and Sergio Ocasio. Her father, an architect, was also born in the Bronx, and her mother was born in Puerto Rico. They left out the fact that her father is an architect. Until age 5, Ocasio-Cortez lived with her family in an apartment in the planned community of Parkchester. Her father then moved the family to a house in Yorktown Heights, a suburb in Westchester County, where she lived until she left home to attend college. From 2003 to 2007, Ocasio-Cortez attended Yorktown High School, where she won second prize in the Intel International Science and Engineering Fair with a research project on microbiology. As a result, the Lincoln Laboratory at MIT named a small asteroid after her, 23238 Ocasio-Cortez. While a student at Boston University, Ocasio-Cortez was an intern in the immigration office of U.S. Senator Ted Kennedy. She graduated from Boston University in 2011 with a bachelor's degree in economics and international relations, which is even sadder that she's a democratic socialist, that she's got a degree in economics. That's fucking sad. Ocasio-Cortez says she has a working-class background and relates many of her political positions to it. When her father died in 2008 without leaving a will, she became involved in a long probate battle to settle his estate. Of that experience, she has said that she learned, quote, firsthand how attorneys appointed by the court to administer an estate can enrich themselves at the expense of the families struggling to make sense of the bureaucracy. She credits seeing the treatment of her cousin by law enforcement, as well as her Catholic faith, for her desire to overhaul mass incarceration in the criminal justice system. After college, Ocasio-Cortez moved back to the Bronx, where she worked 2 jobs, as a bartender and as a waitress in a taqueria, to help support her mother in her battle to fight foreclosure of their home after her father died of cancer. She was also employed as an educator at the nonprofit National Hispanic Institute and established a publishing firm, Brook Avenue Press, that specializes in children's literature portraying the Bronx in a positive light. After finding out that she had been purged from the New York voter rolls and could not vote in the 2016 primary, Ocasio-Cortez worked as an organizer for Bernie Sanders' 2016 presidential campaign. After the general election, she traveled across America by car, visiting places like Flint, Michigan, and Standing Rock, and speaking to people affected by the human rights violations related to the Flint water crisis and the Dakota Access Pipeline. In an interview, she recalled her visit to Standing Rock as a tipping point, saying that before she had felt that the only way to effectively run for office was if you had access to wealth, social influence, and power, but her visit to North Dakota, where she saw others putting their whole lives and everything that they had on the line for the protection of their community, inspired her to begin work for her own community. Now, you can come back to us. I find it interesting. Our second show of the Vin Armani show was about doing a deep dive on Standing Rock.
Right.
And the fact that what the activists were doing there was they were completely in the wrong, and that it was the narrative that was there was a complete lie. It was just a total lie. Like the land in question had been in the family of some of the it was Indian land. It was Indian land. It was in from the time of the treaty. It was in the family lineage of the most famous female member of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe. Their most famous member, Eagle Woman. It was in her family's hands. They legally owned it. The tribe had no problem. They ended up passing it on. They sold it after a while. Everything was done, private property. These people were encroaching on private property. They were saying that the bodies were buried there. The bodies had been moved 20 years before when they did there was just all these lies. And so I find it so funny that, like, here we are thinking critically, like, really wanting to get in and be like, what's going on? We do our research. This woman drives up there by car, produces a little YouTube web series, and she's like, oh, now I know that I can run for office. Yeah, you know that you can run for office because you know that you can just pull the wool over people's eyes.
Right.
We showed how the whole Standing Rock movement, people could go back, watch the second episode. That whole entire movement was orchestrated by PR firms.
Mm-hmm.
We showed the PR firm. We showed the entire breakdown. We showed them blogging about how they were crafting the narrative and how to craft a narrative and all of this, that it was all bullshit. But that people, again, are so stupid. And this raw cynicism to be like, no, you get your way by just play. They're idiots. They'll follow you.
Right. Yeah, they'll follow. Actually, this is interesting. So when I said sympathy, I actually meant empathy. They're using empathy. And empathy is super, super powerful when it comes to advertising in manipulation, in persuasion, you know. But one thing I wanted to say too is like, hopefully this gets out to those people that need it, this conversation. And I know a lot of people that are watching the show right now probably don't need it, and they probably totally agree with everything that we're saying. But I hope this gets out to them. And one thing that I just thought of as we're talking about this is, it may sound like a really good solution right away because you can relate to it and you're going through some pain and stuff like that. Most of the pain will come from actually trying to prevent something from happening. Mm-hmm. So the pain that you're going through right now, you know, with financial or whatever it is, you might be looking to the government to try to solve that problem and try to prevent that pain from happening. That pain needs to happen so you can wake up.
No, you know? Otherwise there's no growth without pain. Really. Right. You know what I mean? And the question becomes, it's like, you know, do you want to be beholden to the government, to someone else for your livelihood? Because it's not free. No. It's not free. The price that you pay is going along with these psychopaths who all they care about is power. Like when she said, they've got money, we've got people. What is she saying there?
Yeah.
What?
She's basically saying that.
What is she saying? They've got money, we've got people. How does she view people? She views people as tools to be used to get what she wants.
Right.
She just told you that. She told you that to her, you're nothing more than a dollar bill in her pocket that she's going to use to purchase what she wants. She told you that. Explicitly told you that. But because the music's underneath, you're like, oh, I'll walk right into my own slavery. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I'm one of the people. I'm one of the people. Yeah, you are. You're being used. You're being used. And yeah, okay. Fine. And you're willing to be cattle. Farmers take care of their cattle.
The people that are falling into the trap are the ones that are the most vulnerable when it comes to this. And that's the sad part, is like, I hope this video, this conversation gets to those people, because
go ahead,
because hopefully this pulls the wool, or the clouds away from the vision, you know what I mean? So like, you can see clearly and you can start to understand what's really happening in this area. What is really happening?
Well, the thing is that the most important thing and the scary part about this is that it worked. Mm-hmm. Okay? She unseated an incumbent who had a lot of establishment support. She unseated him. Mm-hmm. That's a problem. It's a problem because if it turns out that there's a formula to this, already there's nothing to her. We see there's nothing to her. She has what's the greatest thing she's done is to be an intern? That's the greatest accomplishment she has, is to be an intern and to go and to interview some people on YouTube. That's what's supposed to, not even in the Bronx. Mm-hmm. That's what's supposed to qualify her to be able to at 28 to be able to determine public policy that affects everyone in the country. Right. That's what qualifies her.
Well, so with that in mind, do you think that she is also a do you think she's aware of what we're talking about? Like, do you think
Aha.
that
Let's talk about that. Because I said we're going to come back to looking at this imagery. We've looked at the imagery of the buttons. We've looked at the slickly produced, but very specifically produced ad, right? Doesn't look like a political campaign ad. Looks like an advertisement for a a brand that is a very socially savvy brand trying to hit at a very specific millennial audience, SJW audience. It's
Yep.
the type of thing that you would see for a charity, for Apple, for that's what they're hitting on. Go to this Gothamist article because I think it's so interesting. The title is The Story Behind Alexandria, and this goes straight to what you're asking, Christian. The story behind Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's WPA-inspired campaign posters. This is from Gothamist. What's the date? The 29th. On Tuesday, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez made history by unseating 10-term Congressman Joe Crowley in New York's 14th congressional district, despite the polls leading up to the primary showing a near-certain victory for Crowley. The 28-year-old Ocasio-Cortez defeated him by a shocking 15% of the vote. Overnight, she became a media sensation with profiles in the New York Times, appearances on CNN and MSNBC, and even a guest spot on Late Show with Stephen Colbert. Less than a year before that, she was tending bar at a Mexican restaurant, Flat's Fix in Union Square, which is where she met Scott Starrett and Sean Gillen, who run the creative design agency Tandem NYC. Quote, "We met, talking politics over the bar," Starrett told Gothamist. "Now we're really friends." When she went to Standing Rock to protest the construction of the Dakota Access Pipeline in 2016, she borrowed their GoPro. And when she began looking into the branding for her campaign, she turned to them. Quote, "We were friends with Sandy, so we really gave our attention to her campaign and really devoted a lot of time and resources," said Starrett. Sandy is Ocasio-Cortez's nickname because there are other Alexandrias in her family, explains Starrett. I'm just going to stop right there and just say one thing. The fact that she calls herself, and she clearly introduced herself as Sandy to these guys, is really in line with the fact that Barack Obama always introduced himself as Barry. It was only when he started running for office that he was Barack. Okay? So let's go. Let me continue. What they created was one of the most unique campaign posters and brand identities in modern politics. People have hung these bold campaign posters in bodegas, draped them on the hoods of cars, and held them high during Bronx Pride. The campaign began to run into trouble because so many of the posters were being taken down because people were hanging them up in their homes. Quote, "They were begging people not to take their material, saying, 'We'll try to get you one after the campaign,'" said Starrett. Maria Arenas, the lead designer at Tandem on the campaign materials. Now, it's important that that the lead designer on the campaign materials is a Latina. It's going to be important in just a second. The lead designer at Tandem on the campaign materials, Starrett and Gillen provided the art direction, understood the power of these posters when she heard that people were signing up to volunteer on the campaign because the poster inspired them. These images are now on buttons, t-shirts, tote bags, and mugs, all being sold by the campaign. Quote, "Even people outside the district are buying these things to support the campaign," said Arenas. To find inspiration for their design, the team at Tandem turned to old WPA posters, the activists Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta, and Rosie the Riveter. Quote, "We wanted the whole campaign to feel inspiring," said Arenas, and the illustrations of Cesar Chavez gazing upwards inspired her to choose a similar photo of Ocasio-Cortez, taken by photographer Jesse Corman. Okay, now you can come back to us. You had asked, was she aware of
Right.
what's happening? That's not the question to ask. The question to ask is what is this on purpose? Is it on purpose? I think it's very telling that it's like, I'm just going to lay out the scenario because I fucking know how this happened. Here she is, right? You heard her speak, well-spoken, not bad looking, looks a little bit crazy, but certainly looks, looks the part. She cleans up well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know for sure that she's a psycho. I know for sure that she's a psycho. Okay. I can see it in the eyes. Like I know psycho chick, right? I'm a master at that. I would stay far away from her. Okay. But that's par for the course, right? Politician, par for the course.
Yeah.
No problem. They're all psychos. So here she is. She's tending bar, right? At a high-end Mexican restaurant. Trendy, right? Here come in these two hipsters who run a marketing agency.
Yeah.
Who do the type of stuff that we're talking about, the Apple commercials and whatnot. They start talking. She starts talking probably, right? Maybe overhears something, says something. Yep. They're lefties. She's a lefty. Maybe they start talking about Bernie. Oh, yeah, I worked on Bernie's campaign. Oh, and they talk. And one of them goes, have you ever thought of running for office? Where are you from? Have you ever thought of running for office? You've got the background for it. She's like, I don't. He's like, you know, if you wanted to run for office, I bet we could get you elected. Don't you think so? Don't you think we could do it? Like, dude, we could do like Obama, Bernie Sanders. You'd be so much better. You've got all the pieces. So then she's like, I don't know, maybe they see her a second time. You thought about that thing? You ever want to do it? She's like, well, what would I need to do? They're like, well, we need to get you some cred, some street cred, some bona fides, because right now you don't really have any street cred like in the lefty activist community. What could we do? I know. Here's what we'll do. We're going to give you some video equipment, which they admit they did right there. She borrowed their GoPro. And, she produced a web series? She produced the web series?
Sure.
Really? That was her? Where's her video production background?
Yeah, not when you have a team of branding professionals right in front of you.
And we know that she was borrowing their GoPro. You think... So they're like, okay, go out to Flint, do this. Go out to Standing Rock, do this. Okay, that's going to give us our bona fides. We have to have that. That's kind of like your book. Right? That like Obama had his book and Clinton had his book and all. No, but this is for a new generation, so it can't be a book. It's got to be a YouTube series. So then they go and now the most cynical fucking part about this whole thing is that here they are admitting. They're like, admitting. Oh, when we went to go and look for what would her posters look like, we were just like, oh no, we'll just make them look like Latin heroes, like Chicano heroes. Why reinvent the wheel? We'll just go and make it look. Nobody knows who the hell she is, but somehow in their brain it's like, oh, I don't know what that is, but she's a good leader. I know she's a good leader. Yeah, because you think you think you're looking at a... Well, let's see what they think they're looking... Let's do... We Can Do It. Rosie the Riveter. This is how this is played, right? So, We Can Do It, Rosie the Riveter. That's that famous of the woman rolling up her sleeves. She's kind of buff, right? The war effort.
Yep.
Now, We Can Do It was sort of tried to be... The United Farm Workers went and they took that to utilize it. It's weird how this juxtaposition happens with the phrase "si se puede," which doesn't exactly mean we can do it, but it's pretty good to like chant. So you've got "si se puede." So it
flows good too.
That was the call of the United Farm Workers, Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta. Like that was their thing. You see in this picture here, Rosie the Riveter recreated as a female, looks like Mexican revolutionary. She's got the bandolero, she's got the rifle, right? So sort of a female representation from the Mexican Revolution. Si se puede, because the war effort, right? So we're talking about the war effort. Let's go though, because this is how this whole thing works, and it's what makes the cynicism so obvious. Because si se se puede actually means literally, well, not literally. It's like yes it can be done, or yes we can. Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. So here we have
What
it's
is
like
this?
it's this call back and forth to the meme, right? So then it's like when Shepard Fairey, a propaganda artist, sees Barack Obama. So Barack Obama's campaign basically used "Si se puede" in English, but whenever he was at a rally of Latinos, they would just say, "Yes, we can. Si se puede. Yes, we can." So Barack Obama decided he's going to call back to the United Farm Workers. Right? Oh, yes, we can. Si se. Oh, he's saying "Si se puede." That means I know that. That's my side. That's my team. Yeah, I'm on that team. Shepard Fairey hears that. He goes and he takes the photo, makes the famous Hope and Change posters that then everybody goes and uses. You know, everybody knows the image of Barack Obama looking up. Let's do this. People who are watching, tell me, this is so fucking cynical. Tell me that these fucking people didn't just do a remix. Do Obama Cortez. Do this Obama Cortez thing. It makes me so angry to see this level. Look at that. Tell me that's not the same picture. They sat her down and posed her to do the Obama picture.
Yep.
They were like, oh, we're just going to do the picture straight out of Hope and Change. Because, why? When people see it, they'll think Obama, but they won't realize that they're thinking Obama. They won't even realize. Never mind that exact, like, in the profile, looking to the other side, where you get kind of this profile of the person looking away into the sky. Just click on this Castro thing. It's crazy because, like, it's the same, man.
Yeah, it's the same shit.
It's the classic socialist, communist pose. She's in the pose. And the jacked up part about it is, that she's in a neighborhood that has Cubans, that has Dominicans, which they had a terrible, terrible dictator. And that's who she's playing to. What's weird is they escaped that, and she's playing to it. Like telling you, this is who I am, I'm here to oppress you, but it doesn't matter because you're too damn stupid. Not only that, this part is actually brilliant because I caught this. I'm going to assume that this woman, what's her name? Maria Reyes, I'm going to assume that she's Mexican because she said specifically Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta, but then what I find so interesting about even the way that they did her hair and her look is unmistakably a callback to Frida Kahlo. Throw up the Frida. There we go. I mean, you could see, like, I've got the buttons here, and so then on the left is a black and white of Frida. Look at top right. That's a photo of Frida Kahlo, the artist. And then look at her. I wouldn't be surprised even look at the way her hair falls. I wouldn't be surprised if they were like, what we're gonna do is we're gonna do the Obama picture and this picture of Frida, and we're gonna lay them over each other. There's Salma Hayek as Frida down below. You could see same sort of view, looking up to the sky. But it's like, unless most people are unaware, because one thing about Frida in particular is that she's so ubiquitous, particularly in the Mexican community. Her artwork, which people will recognize her face, like she always did self-portraits that were kind of weird, but she was also like bisexual. She was outspoken, sort of politically, very well educated. She was married to Diego Rivera, who was probably the most famous Mexican artist, definitely the most famous muralist probably in the entire world to ever have lived. She had an interesting life, but they're like, you can see that like, this is not by accident.
Nope.
None of this is by accident. And so, Christian, you can come back to us. What's important to me, oh man, it's warm here in New Hampshire, by the way. What's important to me in this discussion is that the problem here is that it worked.
Right.
The problem is that it worked. The problem is that it exposed a bug in the brain of humanity. Mm-hmm. Now, it would be, in other times, it would be effective at mobilizing a particular race of people per se, right? But we're in a time where we have SJW culture, and so it's like, whatever, it'll motivate a bunch of young white folks, young middle-class white folks, because it's like, well, whatever these brown people think, whatever they're going for, that's what I'm going to go for. Except for the fact that this entire campaign was designed by upper middle class capitalist white folks.
Mm-hmm.
You're being played.
Seriously.
You're being played. And this woman is enough of a psychopath and enough wanting power and prestige that she's willing to sell her soul to the devil. And there are enough people willing to sell their soul to the devil that they will never, ever, ever run out of figureheads to put in front. It's like it's pop politics.
Yep. That's exactly what it is.
The fact that it works is scary because now you're not going to know what anybody stands for. Now you're not going to know anything that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Pop
slavery.
How many people, I mean, it's good that Gothamists wrote this. It's good that they're talking about this. Scott Starrett and Sean Gillen, who run the creative design agency Tandem NYC. But you know what? In the future, they're going to learn, oh no, we do not talk about that. We do not expose ourselves. I want to do this because what I see coming is I really see that there's a conflict coming. And I predicted this in my book, Self-Ownership. I just want to read the very last section because it's called the Crypto Savage. It's where I introduce the word Crypto Savage. And the reason why I want to read this section is because what's coming is a choice between which of these two cultures do you want to participate in? This culture that she's a part of, that's on the way towards 1984.
Mm-hmm.
That's the end game. You're going to have everything taken from you, and you're going to just like Winston, spoiler alert, at the end of 1984, that the very last words are, now he loved Big Brother. Just like Winston loved Big Brother at the end, after having fought, if we don't not fight now, but if we don't make a choice now to do something different, generations from now will have no idea. It's idiocracy, man. They'll happily take a failing and corrupt system that gives them a soundtrack in the background. So we're going to talk to a crypto savage in the next hour, but I want to read this. This is the last ending off of my book, as opposed to the ending off of 1984. The Crypto Savage. It is the introduction of chaos embodied as nature into culture which provides the adaptational impetus for cultural evolution. The logical progression of culture is toward absolute order. The systems of control are refined over time. The lump of nature's granite is carefully sculpted over time into the edifice of totalitarian culture. Civilians in an advanced culture look upon their system as Pygmalion looked upon his sculpture, or perhaps as Narcissus looked upon his own reflection, with adoration and in worship. Nature is the flaw in the granite or the slip of the chisel that demands the sculptor's re-examining of his work. A change of course. It was the explorers' discovery of new worlds and strange alien societies that regularly introduced new savages to our civilian ancestors. The sailors of old, when drawing maps, would write, "There be dragons," in the unexplored areas. Each new dragon encountered, like the serpent in the Garden of Eden, brought new revelations to the exploring culture. There are no more dragons left on our maps. We have thoroughly explored our home planet and are setting out to explore other worlds. When we step foot on Mars for the first time, however, our new explorers will not encounter Martians. There will be no newly discovered culture to evolve the highly homogeneous global culture that the space voyagers will leave behind on Earth. From a cultural standpoint, there is no more geography left to be explored here on our home planet. Our culture is a global culture, and it's becoming more uniform with every passing year. If this global culture is to evolve, the savage will have to come from the wilderness within. If you're reading this or listening to it, it's likely that you are this new kind of savage, a crypto-savage. The prefix crypto is derived from the Greek word kryptos, meaning hidden. The crypto-savage then is the one who comes from a hidden wilderness. The term describes an individual who appears to be participating in one culture, but who is really a participant in a wholly other culture. Our technologically advanced world is dominated and controlled by software, by code, magical texts written in languages only understood by an elite few. The culture of software is a culture hidden in plain sight. In the 60-odd years since this culture emerged from the ether, it has grown and shaped the overall mother culture. At the same time, the code was giving birth to a new digital wilderness, a zone only accessible by a new priest class, those who can read and write the code. A civilization has been built in this digital wilderness. Border skirmishes are beginning between the old civilization and the crypto-savages. A conflagration is inevitable. It is fitting that cryptocurrency, hidden money, is the critical cultural development that is fueling the crypto-savage evolution. The global hegemonic culture, the old way, has its basis in ancient systems of trade. The old culture's concept of money evinces the foundational notions of trust at the bedrock of the society. The blockchain and cryptocurrency represent a new and alien system of meeting the needs of humans. This new system cannot be peacefully integrated into the old culture. An integration will be tried. It will fail. Simultaneously, the crypto-savages will adopt the new paradigm as a parallel system. For a time, the crypto-savages will live side by side with the civilians of the old culture. As the new crypto-savage culture begins to take a firm foothold, it is inevitable that there will be psychic bandwidth and a desire for a new paradigm regarding the role of the individual in society. Government and religion are unnecessary in the new culture. Already the mantra "code is law" is whispered by a few. Soon it will be on the lips of millions of crypto-savages. We can write the primacy of the individual deep into that code. We can embed it so firmly into the foundation that it can never be removed. Let us infuse the bones of this new culture with the greatest gift of the old culture, the notion that all individuals are created equal, each of us a flame lit from the eternal and mysterious fire of the divine. And with that, Christian, I think we should go ahead, go to break, and we will be back with Amaury Séchet, the benevolent dictator of Bitcoin ABC.
The spirit of art. The spirit of technology. The spirit of individuality. Baby Vodka. An ultra-premium spirit conceived by Armani. Handcrafted and distilled in Las Vegas by master distiller George Rotz. Each bottle, a celebration of the individual, custom engraved and hand-signed by the creators. Each element blending in harmony to create a beautiful experience beyond imagination. Baby Vodka, the spirit of Vegas. Created by Armani. Tailored by Christian Rays. Available for purchase exclusively with cryptocurrency at babyvodka.com.
Welcome back to the Vin Armani Show. We are streaming live on YouTube at youtube.com/VinArmani. Also on Twitter and Periscope at Vin Armani is my handle there. We are proud members of the Activist Post Podcast Network, so you can check out all of our audio archives at activistpost.com. You can also check us out on dozens of terrestrial radio stations, as well as satellite radio and streaming online at the Liberty Radio Network. That's LRN.FM. So before we get to our guest here in the second hour, just wanted to tell you all a little bit about Countermarkets. Countermarkets, trends and strategies for maximum freedom. Get your first issue for free at countermarkets.com. You know, we've got this month coming up. Wow, I'm realizing that it's like we're 3 days away. So I am going to be in this new issue breaking down what I have learned in the space about actually accepting and earning cryptocurrency as opposed to purchasing it. That's for me, it's one of the most important, it's not about usage. Usage of cryptocurrency, I think, is far less important in terms of the buying of it. What's important for us is the earning of it. And so much of what's going on in terms of the angst that people are having about there not being jobs and people having financial hardship, especially this group of millennials that are having a very, very difficult time. Crypto is going to allow a way out of that, because it's going to allow starting businesses without the involvement of the state. It's going to allow a level of economic freedom that we have not seen for perhaps 1,000 years, at least several hundred. And there are a few very important people who are going to be bringing that to us and who have already brought us so much, one of whom is my guest today. My guest is Amaury Séchet, best known by his handle Deadal Nix. He's a software engineer and speaker and the Benevolent Dictator of Bitcoin ABC. He's also arguably, and we'll talk about that a little bit, the creator, I'm going to put that in air quotes, of Bitcoin Cash. Amaury Séchet, welcome to the Vin Armani Show.
Hey.
It is good to have you here. We're going to talk a little bit. I always get these weird sound issues, so you may see me over here like messing around with the sound. Good to have you on. It's interesting because I feel like you have not really been somebody who has been pushing himself forward as a public figure. I know that when you're asked, for instance, to speak, that you will come and speak. I was glad that I was able to get you on the show, because I think that your story is very, very important, especially right now. People were commenting on your anarcho-capitalist hoodie. I used a photo of you from the CoinGeek conference, and you were wearing that when I first ran into you in Hong Kong. Can you tell us a little bit about, so that we can understand your background, maybe in the context of how you first discovered Bitcoin and why it's important to you, and then we can go from there about jumping into the story of Bitcoin ABC and, of course, what's made you controversial now, the creation of Bitcoin Cash.
Okay. I have already echo with myself. I'm not sure that. Okay, it's better now. So I've been interested in distributed system and peer-to-peer system for a very long time, way before there was digital currency. And digital currency at the time was kind of the holy grail. A lot of people were working on it. So what maybe people don't quite realize is that Bitcoin is maybe the first iteration that worked, but there have been many technology before that have been tried maybe over the past 25, 30 years or so. And I was very interested by those. I thought there was a lot of potential there, but it never quite worked. They all had some flaw somewhere, and to the point where a lot of people started to believe that it was not possible. And to some extent, I was one of those. I was not like 100% convinced that it was not possible, but I was starting to believe that maybe it's not possible. In 2011, when Satoshi Nakamoto raised Bitcoin, I don't realize right away what was happening. I discovered it myself in 2010. And I was very skeptical at the beginning because I saw so many previous iterations that did not work. But I read the white paper and I was like, this looks like this is solid. And there was a very interesting twist. There was a very interesting twist in what Satoshi did. He essentially, there was a missing piece of technology that nobody could quite figure out, and he used not technology to fix that piece, he used economics, because we are building a digital currency. We have economics also built into it, and maybe that piece that we could not make work with technology, we can make it work with economics. So that was extremely interesting. I stayed in the background of Bitcoin for most of that time because it worked fairly well. But over the past 2 years, I saw people making decisions that would break the economics of Bitcoin, which was obviously very bad. And so I decided to get involved a bit more, and that ended up with the creation of Bitcoin ABC, which is the main software that powers Bitcoin Cash right now.
So you described an economic problem, or you described a problem that was trying to be solved with code, or with a technical solution, but that Bitcoin specifically solved this problem with an economic solution. Can you explain exactly for people to know what is the problem and how does Bitcoin solve it?
This problem is the Byzantine general problem. I don't quite like the original formula. This is a very old problem in mathematics, right? That it exists from way before computers. And the traditional way to formulate it, and I'm not sure it's the best way, but it's you have a set of generals and they need to agree to attack a city. And they know that if enough of them agree and attack the city at the same time, then they are gonna win, right? But if one of them go alone or a few of them decide to attack the city, then the city has enough defense that they are screwed essentially. And so you have a problem because those general, they need to send messenger and stuff like that. So maybe the messenger is gonna be attacked on the way and not arrive, or maybe the messenger himself is not reliable and it's gonna change the message or whatever, right? And within that environment where everything fails or everything can be offside, the generals still need to agree on something. And you need to solve that problem if you want to make a peer-to-peer currency, because you need to make sure that the same money is not spent twice. Mm-hmm. That may seem on the surface like a very different problem, but deep down, this is the same problem, right? Every computer on the network needs to agree on what spent, like who owns what money, right? And the same money cannot be owned by two persons at the same time. And because anybody can send any message on the network at any time, even messages that are contradictory, then the network needs to find a way to reconcile all of that. For instance, I can send one message to someone on the network saying that I'm sending you some money, I'm sending money to Vin. And then I'm gonna send another message on the network saying, no, actually I'm sending that money to someone else, right? And the network needs to figure out if that money belongs to Vin or belongs to someone else. And it may seem like a simple problem. It's actually an extremely difficult problem to solve because transmitting information is not instantaneous, mm-hmm. right? So you may have some host in the network, some computer that see one of the message first, but also a computer that see the other message first, and you need to reconcile that somehow. And it turns out that this is a problem that is exceedingly difficult to solve. And the way Satoshi solved it is that he created this concept of blockchain with proof of work. So you have miners on the Bitcoin network that are performing computation to try to produce a block. And within that block, there is a set of transactions. And the set of transactions that is within the next block is going to be considered by pretty much everybody as valid. And at no point in time, you have the notion that there is a final decision, right? There may be other blocks that exist on the network that you have not seen. Mm-hmm. But because it's extremely expensive to produce those blocks, then it creates incentive for miners to make sure that you are aware of those blocks, so to be well connected to the network and to each other. Because if they were to produce a block and that nobody knows about that block, then essentially they wasted all the resources that they put into the creation of the block. So it creates economic incentive for them to behave right. It also creates a huge cost to any actor that would not fall into consensus. So some miner decide, no. I don't want Vin to get that money. I would prefer this someone else person to get that money. But if a block arrives, say Vin has the money, then the person that would not accept that state as the state of the world needs to continue to perform computation on some other chain. And very likely all this computation is wasted and won't have any value, right? So it creates this whole economic system where actors have to behave right toward finding the consensus, or it's going to be exceedingly expensive for them.
So,
which is a bit of a roundabout, you know?
No, I think it's a good starting point, because I see within the community this conflict still going on of individuals who say, okay, here are the possible, let's say the possible bad scenarios that can occur. What we want to do is we want to create a technical solution that will absolutely prevent those bad scenarios, a double spend, for instance, from ever happening. And then there's another side, and I feel like perhaps this is everything I've read from Satoshi, it seems that this is how he was approaching it, is this idea that, well, over time, if we understand economics and we have the economic incentives correct, over time, it's going to work itself out in the way that we want. It's about building the economic incentives in rather than always shooting for a technical, I don't know whether you call it a safety net or pushing everything into such a tight space, right, that putting it down that road. Is that essentially what you're saying? I mean, is that how you come at it yourself?
Yes, and I'm not per se of the you know, I don't have that idea that anything needs to be solved with the economic incentives, but they are there and they work, and we don't have a technical solution for that problem, right? That don't involve economics, and because of that, you have a part of the community that is maybe a different economic idea that would consider that the system is broken and needed of fixing. But in the process of fixing it in their mind, they're actually breaking it as far as I can see.
I think that's okay. Okay. I want to talk about, so I don't want to go too technical, but there is so much that I would like to talk with you about that does not get talked about and that you have such a unique perspective on. I'd like to go, if we could go back to when you began to feel that there might be a reason to go a different route, to work on that perhaps a fork might be needed. Not necessarily the point where you said, I'm going to just go ahead and put this into our implementation, but where was the point? Do you recall where you said, this is not where Bitcoin is not working, something needs to be done? Can you recall when that point was?
Yeah, well, actually, this is quite interesting because in 2011, 2012 or so, I was looking into Bitcoin, and I was looking, so I knew already about it at the time, but I was wondering, like, is this the next big thing, or is this, just some cool stuff, but it's never gonna be like, more scale or whatever. And I stumbled on the block size at that point in time. And so there was this 1 megabyte block size, but obviously at the time the blocks were, a few kilobytes in size. So we were very, very far from the limits. And you had people, I don't know if your public is familiar, but you have a community that call itself Bitcoin.
Yes.
Yeah, so those are people that essentially don't like the whole idea of cryptos and stuff like that. And the people from Bitcoin at the time, they were saying, well, you have this 1 megabyte limit, and that means that you cannot process more than 3 or 4 transactions per second, which is really not a lot when you think about it. This is what a busy supermarket does. What a supermarket does on a busy day.
Sure.
So it's like not even enough for a city. And so that got me thinking, they were like, what is the Bitcoin community thinking about this whole block size stuff? So I got to talk to various people, and everybody at the time was like, you know what, this block size limit, it's needed for various technical reasons. If you want, we can go into this, but it should never be anywhere close to where the actual demand is. Mm-hmm. And that was what almost everybody thought at the time. So I was like, okay, all right, this is... it seems that those people, they have it together. So this is some serious stuff. And maybe the first stuff that got me thinking that maybe after all there gonna be a problem was, I think it was 2013, but I'm not quite sure. But there was a video that was produced with quite high production value, explaining that small block was what was keeping Bitcoin decentralized, and it was very important to respect it and everything. And I was like, this is interesting, because then there are people that think that, and they are not just nobody, they're willing to put something that is high production value. So they are fairly committed to that. They are putting money behind it and stuff. So I was thinking at that time, like maybe there are going to be some trouble over this. And in 2015, 16 or so, it was very, very clear that there's going to be a very, very deep conflict in the community about this. So by 2015 or so, I was fairly convinced that we would end up having a very big conflict in the Bitcoin community. This is what happened.
I want to talk about that conflict, because I think that now we're moving into a space where this meme, this technology of Bitcoin, of cryptocurrency, is going to move forward. There was a fork. It's weird. I talk to people and they say, "Oh, there's been so many Bitcoin forks," and I'm like, yeah, I mean, technically there's been quite a few forks of Bitcoin, but the fork that I'm talking about, like a schism, where you have the community itself actually split into, not just somebody saying, oh, I think I can do it a little bit better with a different proof of work algorithm and this and that, and they get a few investors together, because anybody can fork Bitcoin. Anybody can. But yeah. When you have a scenario that is a fork of the culture, that's a fork of the community, that's only happened once so far, although clearly if it goes on, it's going to happen, because there's no real barrier to it occurring, besides the fact that the vast majority of us, for economic reasons, don't want those things to happen, because it adds instability. We'd rather have a single coin. What I'm interested to know is, how does this start? Because clearly you were there. There's things that are taking place. How are the discussions starting initially that sort of turns the fire onto the pot, and gets it starting to warm up to the point where it, boils over, and then we have our fork? What is the kernel that starts it? Or at least for you, what was the state of the conversations? Who was having the conversations? What were the conversations about? When did this start to happen?
I think one of the major things that started boiling, as you stated, was probably the Hong Kong agreement. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of like an attempt at finding a compromise, which was very similar to SegWit 2x that happened after. Essentially, people wanted to activate SegWit and activate bigger block, and find some compromise around that. And so what was agreed is that miner would deploy SegWit, but before miner would deploy SegWit, the Bitcoin core developer, they would have to code also a block size increase in the software within, I don't remember the term of the agreement, but within 3 months or 6 months or something like that. And 3 months or 6 months or whatever the time was passed, and there is no work done on that front. Not even an attempt or anything. And so at this point, it was very clear that one of the sides was not there to negotiate. They were there at least to stall maybe, but they were not willing to compromise on anything on their side. So when you have two sides and there is no negotiation or anything going on, and there is divergent goal, you're pretty much guaranteed that there are going to be some conflict going forward.
And so as this sort of conflict continues on, so the Hong Kong agreement gets broken, basically. But now there's no, I mean, these are sort of, everybody's an independent actor here in this case, except of course the people who have commit access to the Bitcoin core repo. In that case, that's a very small group of people who can decide what's going to go into there. But yet there are other implementations. At this point, is Bitcoin ABC a player? Is Bitcoin ABC on the BTC blockchain? How does the idea for Bitcoin ABC? Because that's a lot of work. There's obviously going to be you're not just going to step into that for no reason. How does that decision get made?
Yeah. So what happened is that in 2017. Early in the year, I was working on, I was still trying to find a way to make things work. And what I was seeing at the time is that on one hand, you had the people that are more on the Bitcoin core side. They were very, very entrenched in their position. But on the other side, I saw the big law side that was very idealistic and was also not doing what was necessary to gain a lot of traction. So I was like, we're like, the situation is still not gonna either split cleanly or like, it's still kind of gridlocked. And there is Pulse.io. I don't know if you're familiar with Pulse.io, but their team come with an idea called extension block, which was essentially a technology that would bring the advantages of SegWit, but without a lot of the drawbacks of SegWit, and also would increase capacity. So that seemed like a very interesting proposal and maybe some compromise that people would be willing to go with. So I started working on that. They already had an implementation of it, but on their client software called Bitcoin. And so I was like, okay, if this is gonna get traction, this needs to have an implementation that is based on the old Satoshi code base, so that people can swap whatever they're running right now to run that very easily. And so I was working on that, and this is how Bitcoin ABC started happening. But then I saw various moves by various players that led me to believe that a split was imminent. I can go into that, but it involved USF and SegWit2x and all of that. So there would be like more background to lay down before I can explain that. But essentially, I see the different actor and the way they are behaving led me to believe that it's not gonna turn out like most people expect. So at this point, I stopped working on the extension block stuff. I stripped it from the code base and start implementing what is known as Bitcoin Cash, essentially. But yeah, when I started to do that, Bitcoin ABC was not really, it was essentially a research project where I could do experiments and stuff like that. It was not meant as, main implementation, but then there was this tornado event. So, there was an opportunity and nobody was essentially doing what it takes to make it happen. So, I jumped in.
So tell us, so we've got the fork because we have fundamentally, or not even fundamentally, but there's at least enough difference in consensus rules for this thing to fork so that people can understand. First off, Bitcoin ABC, I mean, that was the first implementation that was essentially what is Bitcoin, the Bitcoin Cash blockchain, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Can you tell us what was the sum total of the rule changes that Bitcoin ABC was implementing and besides the replay protection, but you could talk about that because that automatically does it. And I'd love to discuss the whole situation of how the replay protection thing happened and explain to people that whole situation. What are the rule changes that are in ABC that necessarily split the chain?
So there was one rule that was there to make sure the chain splits at the proper time. The first block. So there was a triggering mechanism that would happen August 1, and the first block must be bigger than 1 megabyte.
Got it.
And so as a result, none of the other client software would accept it, and we would get a clean fork. And then none of the transaction on one chain play on the other chain and vice versa, because the signature algorithm is slightly different. And it's different in a way that have other advantages. It fixes a few problems that exist with the existing one. So yeah, changing it, we needed to change it to provide replay protection. So we made sure to choose something that would, essentially provide additional value. It fixes a bug, a performance bug that is known as quadratic hashing, where big transaction takes an absurd amount of resources to validate. It also includes, I think, one of the most important features is signature cover value, which means that you need to know the amount of coin that you are spending to produce the signature, which was not the case previously. Mm-hmm. And that means that a hardware wallet or anything that is offline, if you lie to that device when you spend the coin, the signature it's going to produce is going to be invalid. So no, something like a Trezor or Ledger or some hardware wallet can verify how much money you are spending.
Okay, so one of the things that that I'm curious about as you were releasing Bitcoin ABC, what was because now most of the major pools that mine BTC and that were mining BTC are now mining Bitcoin Cash. I went and looked at, far and away, it's Bitcoin ABC, so I'm assuming that most of their rigs are running Bitcoin ABC. What was the response from the miners as individuals, beyond just you seeing it being downloaded and picked up and used as these months have progressed? Were you getting contacted by the miners in the space? Were they telling you? Were they saying do this? Were they saying
we
please
actually
don't?
got in touch with several miners. So what happened is that before the whole Bitcoin ABC stuff, there was discussion between Bitcoin Unlimited and miners, and Bitcoin Classic as well, and I was part of those discussions. So I was already in touch with several miners when I started the whole stuff. And so I got in touch with a few of them. Some of them were supportive, some of them were, not quite sure. But what happened is that via BTC, that is a miner, but at the time they also had an exchange that is not called CoinEx. Mm-hmm. But at the time CoinEx was called via BTC as well. It's run also by Hypo. They did a future market for Bitcoin Cash, and the price was, it was good. Like for, I think it was essentially the highest market cap at launch for any coin ever. So that was, that was very encouraging, and so it turned around also a lot of people. Having a price, several weeks before the launch was very, very useful.
So there was already. So you felt pretty secure at the time when this was rolling through that this would work?
Well, you never know, right? But it is. Like you've launched Cointext, so you've launched some product in the wild. You try to make sure that everything is aligned and that everybody is aware and is gonna do the right thing. But when you're not 100% secure.
So one of the things, and this is. I wanted to talk with you about this next topic because I'm not even sure myself what I have not yet been able to really formulate an opinion on this, and that is the hard fork every 6 months when we're talking about Bitcoin Cash. That's happening across all the implementations, but clearly as the main implementation, you guys are you're really leading the charge on this. That there's been a lot of criticism from the other side of saying, oh, they're hard forking, and that means because everybody's following along with that necessarily means that it's controlled and it's centralized, and it's this whole centralization meme is first off, I think it's bullshit. Somebody has to make some decisions at some point, and people can decide whether they're going to follow or not, and clearly it's your implementation, so you could decide. Why did you? I mean, well, first off, was it your decision, or was the idea from someone else to do this regularly scheduled update, hard fork update, or oh well, the second thing is, and why? What's the positive of doing it that way as opposed to rolling it out sort of piecemeal and as needed?
Yeah, so we knew that there were a few changes that we wanted to make, and that would be hard forks. And so the question is, how do you make sure that this is deployed and everything goes as well as possible? And so we started talking with people, and it turns out that it's easier for most people involved in the space. It's easier to have a schedule that is known well in advance, so they know, they know when things happen. They can have someone that is on call specifically watching for it. If they know several months in advance, they can organize everything around it, right? They know they can schedule the upgrade of their nodes and stuff like that based on that schedule and everything. So that was actually a pretty strong demand from the ecosystem in general to have predictable dates for hard forks. And this is how it ended up happening every 6 months. That was not really my idea per se. Originally, it was like, we are gonna bundle a few change, and when we have enough, we can roll that out. But it turns out that most actors would prefer to have some predictable schedule, even if there is less in each of them.
All right. So with that in mind, with the updates in mind, I wanted to get your thoughts on the speed with which you feel we should be scaling, or I don't want to say scaling, but that we should be increasing the block size, and I don't even want to say we. The speed at which you feel that Bitcoin ABC should increase its block size. It went from 8 to 32. It's at 32 now. The blocks, however, are going in far below even 1 meg on Bitcoin Cash now. I personally, I don't really truly understand why, complexity would be placed into the project through, block sizes larger than this if we're really far away from that sort of demand. What is your take on this? There's a certain segment of the community, and we're going to talk with Johannes Vermaarel in the next week or two on the show. There's a certain segment of the community that wants to take this thing to like terabyte blocks as quickly as possible. Where do you stand on this whole thing?
So first we went to 32 megs because this is essentially what you can get when you scrap all the low-hanging fruit, right? So, but we also know like going beyond 32 megs is more work. And the thing that the elements that we prioritize going bigger than that are the elements that require changes that are, consensus scale of changes. And that makes sense weird, right? Because those are the most difficult change, and those are not even the most impactful one. There are stuff we can change in the code base right now that would allow for a bigger block size, that would have a bigger impact on the kind of block size we can reach than the consensus change that we are planning to get there. But there is also another aspect that is more economic. That is the cost of a hard fork is proportional to the size of the ecosystem. Right? Yes. Because the more actor there is in the ecosystem, the more actors need to upgrade their system and all of that. And so we got to realize that growing the block size right now is significantly cheaper than doing it where you are like, so right now we have blocks that are less than 1 megabyte, right? So if we grow by a factor of 10, it becomes 10 times more expensive to increase the block size. So by a factor of 10, we wouldn't still be at the limit, but you want to make sure that the change that are consensus related goes in as soon as possible, so it's as cheap as possible for the ecosystem.
This is okay. That's great. I guess I hadn't considered that, but that does make a lot of sense to me. On the tip of economics, you are, as I mentioned beforehand, I mean, we have a lot of anarcho-capitalists listeners, I mean, well, you could probably tell by the colors of the show and the logo where I stand on that. You wear that on your sleeve, and I think that it's a very important thing for those of us who are considering which currency to stake our lot on, that those of us who, are libertarians and who have some economic knowledge would follow somebody who fits in that same way. What do you think the future holds in terms of the empowerment of an anarcho-capitalist ethos? What place do you feel that that Bitcoin specifically plays in sort of being able to bring forth some of these ideas that previously have only been either theoretical or well described by the Mises and the Hayeks of the world? What role do you think Bitcoin is going to play, let's say, in the next 10 to 20 years?
Well, there's definitely a separation of the structure of power and money, which is, I think, probably the most important part of it. So let's rewind a bit. But one thing that people don't quite realize, because we use money every day, but we don't really think about it, is that what usually happens is that people use precious metal as money, most often gold or silver, because it has all the good property you want in money, right? It's fungible, it's scarce, it's everything you want for money. But it's not very convenient to use on a day-to-day basis. And so people start to come up with, quickly, if it's not very convenient to use, you can see that as a tax on every transaction.
Yes.
It's not a monetary tax, but you can't count it in money, right? So it makes transaction more difficult. So essentially, you have a transaction cost that is pretty high, even though you don't pay a transaction cost to someone. And so people start building systems on top of it, like they start trading in gold IOUs, right? So this is like gold back, like this is the gold standard essentially. You have notes that say, okay, this note is that many, that much gold. And you can trade the notes and you can get your gold if you want. But what happened is that because you have those two systems, and notes themselves are not scarce, right?
Right. We know that, yeah.
It's very easy to produce a piece of paper. And so what it means is that by doing so, you introduce a level of trust. You introduce a level of trust that the people that are managing the notes and the gold are actually, doing that properly, and there is actually gold behind each note. But obviously, the incentive for the people that are managing that are completely all wrong, right? They have a huge incentive to try to screw everybody, and they end up doing it always at some point. And this is one of the reasons we have many societal stuff that are based around that people don't quite realize, right? But as a result of that, as a result of that, at some point we decide to not have an index on gold anymore.
Right.
But by that time, it's pretty much irrelevant because there is already many more notes in circulation than there is gold. So it's more or less of a mission of what was happening more than an actual change in the currency at this point. But what's happening is that as you print more note, the value of each note decreases, right? The goods and services you can buy with those notes is less than it used to be. And so it's some sort of a tax, except that you never have to collect people and get their money, which tend to make them not very happy, usually.
Right.
But it has more perverse effect, right? So the people it takes time for the market to adjust to the new supply of money, right? When you print some new money in circulation, at first, everything is the same. So the people that are close from the source can spend the money at its full value pre-inflation. And then later down, people that are downstream spend the money at the post-inflation price, right? So you have a transfer of value from people that are well connected to people that, like the common people. So that's the second tax you have on that, right? Like first we are taxing their saving, but then we are also transferring value from there to people well connected. But you also have a third tax that is based on that people don't quite realize. In most countries, you have tax brackets.
Yes.
Right. So say the first, I don't know what they are in the US, but the first $1,000 of your income is taxed at 10%, and then the next $1,000 at 15% and whatever. Right. I'm sure I get this number completely wrong, but this is the kind of idea, right? But those numbers, they don't change with the inflation.
Aha.
So when you have like $1,000 of purchasing power, then later in the future, you negotiate a raise because you cannot buy anything anymore with the kind of money you have, and your boss gives you a raise, and now you make $1,200, right? But now you're in the new tax bracket.
Right. So you actually make less.
Yeah, so you actually make less, and but it's kind of brilliant, right? Because you don't need to increase the taxes. Actually, you know, if you are in the position of power, you get like a triple tax doing that, right? Like you get new money for free, you get transfer from because you get to spend that money pre-inflation, and then you get more tax going forward. So there is no reason that the people in position of power would not do that. That give a tremendous amount of power. Like, you know, because if you got to convince people to pay taxes, I mean, they do it because they are pretty much, it's not like they have much of a choice, but they are not very happy about that, right? And each time you raise the taxes, the people are like, they start to not liking you and stuff, but this is much more sneaky. And so yeah.
So
this is a huge level of power that people don't realize exists.
So this is, I mean, it's so interesting to me that, you know, like I love the Jacques Ellul quote where he says, there are no political solutions, only technological ones, and all the rest is propaganda. And I feel like, you know, we started out this first hour talking about this sort of political phenomenon of this woman in New York who just won this congressional race, this 28-year-old woman, you know, who has no background, no nothing, but is the marketing in front of it is so good. And I see like the sort of almost the reverse of Bitcoin succeeding almost in spite of all of that. That like from the outside, the press from the beginning has been so bad, right? That it's like, oh, they buy drugs with that. That's drug stuff, and it's you know, illegal. And then and then it's a bubble. And then even within our own community, that we you know, we've got the daggers out constantly, like attacking each other, and like we're creating enough within the community, you know, to fight each other. We're creating enough bad press, and yet this technological solution is surviving is just like regardless. I'm interested, you know, you were part of the I mean, it's going to go down, and you have a place in history now with what your place has been with in terms of Bitcoin Cash and this first fork happening. You know, if you had a message to sort of the Bitcoin Cash community in terms of how maybe, you know, of course a fork is inevitable at some point in the future. If this becomes the money for the world, there's no way to stop that from happening. Is there any advice or anything that you see happening right now that you say is something that we could be cleaning up or at least paying attention to, that you see as potentially could be leading to a Bitcoin Cash, a fork of Bitcoin Cash, and splitting off the community in the way that BCH and BTC split?
I don't know if I see something that would lead to a split yet, but there is, I think, a trend that is not very good in the BCH community that exists also in many other crypto communities. It's not specific to the BCH, but you see a lot of projects that are like, you know, done but not quite done, right? So it works, but it's not quite done. You know what I mean? Like the step between having some tool or some stuff that works, you know, that is usable, and the one that, you know, it's very clear what it does, and you know, it just works. You don't have to think much about it and whatever, right? Like you you pick your phone or whatever and it just works.
Right.
The step between those two stuff is huge. It's it's huge. It's not any big stuff, but it's 1,000 small details that you gotta get right. Mm-hmm. And this part of the work is completely neglected by the crypto space, and I'd say maybe like BCH is not the worst, but it's not the best either on that front. And if you want to be the number one, so what makes it? See, for instance, you have Apple. Apple sells computer that have the same CPU, memory, type of screen and all of that many other computers for most of them, right? They're not like more powerful or anything, but they are like 1.5 times more expensive.
Right.
And what's the difference between that Apple computer and the other computer that is less expensive? Because people are clearly buying Apple computers, right?
Yep.
So some people are willing to put significantly more money into an Apple computer than a seemingly equivalent computer from some other brand. And there is not one big reason for that. It's not like there is like this one feature that the Apple computer has and that the other computer cannot do. It's a bazillion of small details that Apple is better at getting right than other computer manufacturers. Mm-hmm. Right? It's just like most of the laptop you can buy, for instance, have like some plastic cover and stuff like that. Apple does it in aluminum. It's more sturdy. It's probably slightly more expensive, but it's not more expensive in the kind of range that you see the difference of price between Apple and those manufacturers. You know what I mean? The trackpad is larger and more precise, right? Or it's many small changes like that. It's not like there is not like one stuff that the Apple computer can do. And Apple has a huge market share because of that. They pay attention to detail. What we see in that happens a lot in the crypto space is that you have techno that launch that don't even work. Mm-hmm. Or some of them that are not even launched that have huge valuation, right? I think Tezos have not launched, or they are planning to launch very soon. They have a huge valuation. EOS, we know that the validation process is actually not secure, and it's still like number 5 or 6 or something like that on CoinMarketCap right now. It's so those stuff are completely absurd, right? And if we go back, so it's just a few examples that are even more egregious than what happened in the Bitcoin Cash community. But in the Bitcoin Cash community, you have a lot of stuff where there is something that is created, and people are like, "Wow, yeah, this is awesome, right? This is going in the huge direction." But at this point, you get like all the validation and everything, right? And all progress stops, and then you have the next guy that come up doing the next stuff. And same stuff, right? They get it 80% right, and then it goes nowhere. And we see that happening a lot. And as long as we do that, we don't grow, because this is going to appeal to people that are already in the community and like those stuff and want to use them. This is not going to attract new people from outside. I can give a few examples, right? So there is this platform that is like Twitter, but use Bitcoin Cash to store the messages, and so that ensures that there is no censorship possible or anything. Mm-hmm. It's called memo.cash, and it's a cool stuff. It's interesting. It's funny to use. We'll see where that goes in the future. But when you go on the website and you look at the interface and everything, it's Back to the Future, right?
Right.
It looks like a 90s a website from the 90s. The UI is not very good, right? So it's not something that I can present to my parents, say, and they're gonna use.
Right.
It's not gonna happen. You have like a bunch of wallets that are completely bizarre to use, that nobody that don't understand how crypto work can use. Mm-hmm. Even various other stuff, right? You have this project that is very, very cool. I hope that grows. That is called Cash Shuffle, which is essentially something that you can integrate into your wallet, and it's gonna mix the transaction that several people are doing at the same time, so it increases privacy. But same stuff, right? You need to download the wallet, and then you need to download the module and plug that module in the wallet and activate it or configure whatever, and then you can use it. Right? It's just like, it's not gonna happen.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's gonna do this. And so what's happening is that people reach us about that, and then they consider it done and they move to the next stuff. But it's not done, right? It's done when everybody uses it without even knowing they use it. That is when it's done. Maybe the call algorithm is done,
mm-hmm.
but that is it works, right? That is not the product is done. And the crypto space need to understand the product is done, because what's happening as a result is that it values the people that are able to roll out a ton of half-done product rather than the people that stick to something and really get it right.
Mm-hmm.
And this is I see right now this is like the biggest problem, because then as you get those kind of people in place, then you get like people that jump from one stuff to another, nothing gets done, and then you don't know where the community goes from there. But if there is a split or something like that, immediately that's probably the ideal direction.
I mean, I have to, I have to agree. I definitely feel the same way. Like, well, I mean, look, the projects that I've been dedicated to, it's like, it's not supposed to be sexy. It's supposed to be so simple that anybody can use it, and it's supposed to always, always, always work. Like, that's the thing, and to make it work even better. I loved when you came out in Hong Kong, and your introductory remarks were, if I'm doing my job, you won't even know that I'm there. And I loved that, man. Like, that if you're doing it right, like, that nobody's even going to know that you're there. And I think that's what it's going to take for this new money to really come forward and to do what it can do and what it's supposed to do.
I mean, this is infrastructure, right? So this is all infrastructure. Being software or something else should work, right? So I have electricity in my home. It comes from some wire somewhere. All of it works, right? If I wanted to know, I could know, because actually I've studied electronics and all of that, but I don't need to know to use electricity in my home, right? It's just, it arrives, and there is a bill that arrives every 2 months, and I pay my bill, and I have electricity in my home, end of story, right? And there's a ton of stuff. There is water that I can drink, mm-hmm. that arrive, like, people don't quite realize this is quite amazing, all those stuff that just arrive, this just happened. For whole humanity, thousands of years, all those stuff like Ether did not exist, or were a huge pain in the ass. And now the whole happened to us. I have my garbage. I put my garbage, like the right day, and I know that the guy with the truck pass and pick up my garbage and bring it, like, burn it or bring it somewhere, or I pick it out, someone pick it up. Once after some time I get a bill, end of story, right? This is how you want stuff to be. Life is complicated enough, and you want people to focus on, whatever they need to focus on. Usually it's going to be their work, their family, whatever, like, people have enough stuff to do. They don't need to understand, like, cryptography and all that shit. I mean, like think about it. If everybody were thinking that way, like, you cannot have electricity in your home if you are not a link.
Right. Yeah, that's not going to work.
Doesn't make any sense. You plug your stuff and it works, right? You push the button, you plug it, you push the button, and it works. So this is the mentality you need to have if you want to build good infrastructure that people are gonna use. This is where you want it to be. Like, people don't care by what wire the electricity arrives in their home, or even if it's wire or something else, right? People don't care. Like, I don't give a crap by what router or whatever or communication here. Like, there is obviously packets that are exchanged between my computer and you right now. They are going through hundreds of machines, mm-hmm. plugged in, like, various companies on the internet. They are going through the Atlantic and everything. It's mm-hmm. like, there is a huge infrastructure involved here. I know none of it, and I don't want to know any of it. I know it works and it's wonderful, right?
Well, I love it. Yeah. I mean, I think that's probably a good place to end it, because of the fact that here you are, somebody who's creating something that works, and it's definitely wonderful. And I mean, we've built our business on top of the network that you are responsible for having the courage to step out and create. So I want to really thank you for that, and I encourage everybody to go and follow you at Deadal Nix on Twitter for sure, because especially as of late, you've been dropping some serious knowledge. So Amaury Séchet, thank you so much for being on the show, and we'll have to have you on again, but I'm sure I'll see you before then. So thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, brother. Thank you. Christian, hold on. I've got you muted. I've got you muted, Christian. There you are.
Cool.
Super smart guy,
awesome.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, super smart guy. Like, you know, he is the prime example of that quote. There are no political solutions, only technological ones. It's like, you know what? Just make it. Just make it. Make the solution.
Yep. And I realized too, with what he was saying, like, I don't want, and what you were saying too, I don't want to know how it works. I just want to be able to use it. I think that because the technology is so advanced, that the skill set required to use things is obviously higher, or the understanding, not necessarily the skill set, but the understanding. Like, you can't just go and plug something in. You're going to have to know how to download an app. Now, if somebody doesn't know what a phone is, how are they going to download an app? You know what I mean? So, like, I think that there is an opportunity and a lot of potential there for those people, especially with like evangelists and stuff like that, for those people teaching how to actually get involved and start using these things. And when I saw this potential when you guys were discussing that, like, wow, with the communication resources that we have now, getting this information out to people, that is just the gap between not necessarily creating it, but getting started with it. There's a huge potential for that.
I mean, well, then, which brings us back to, why don't you go ahead and throw back up the BCH Meetup for those people who are in Vegas and want to check out, who want to get involved, learn a little bit more. Christian, why don't you go ahead and just promo it again, because I can't
Sure
promo
thing.
these things enough, really.
Yeah, Thursday from 7 to 9 p.m., the Bitcoin Cash Meetup in Las Vegas at Las Vegas Distillery, sponsored by Bitcoin.com, the Bitcoin Cash Fund, Baby Vodka, Tech Titans, Las Vegas Distillery. It's going to be tons of fun, and you will get the information and the resources that will put you in position to use this and earn from this and understand this whole new society, this whole new America of potential, and also the future of what's to come with this. So
love it,
it
man.
would be a great way to start that off for you.
Awesome. Well, thank you for today, dude. Is there anything else? Let me think. I feel like I have left something out that I was meaning to talk about, but perhaps not. No, nothing else there. All right, well then let me say goodbye to the people, because we've come out to the end. Thank you for today, Christian. So thank you guys for joining in. I hope that you enjoyed the show. Really want to thank my guest Amaury Séchet for all that he has done and continues to do, and for really it's nice to see that. ANCAPs, that anarcho-capitalists and radical libertarians, there is a place for us to change the world, folks. And there are real solutions that really make a difference. And I'm glad to be a part of that. Thank everybody who's a part of that as well. I encourage you we're in the baby stages. There's plenty of time. Go and learn. You can evangelize this thing. You have enough time, believe me, you have enough time, even if you don't know how to code, to learn how to code. You have enough time to still be a part of what's going to be one of the most amazing phenomena in our entire lifetimes, and that is Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. So thank you guys again. You can check out our audio archives at activistpost.com, and of course our podcast on iTunes and Stitcher. We will be back again next week, Monday, 10 a.m. Pacific time, and until then, stay free.